And I think it's all connected. I think that this is kind of a progression that we're going to see over the next couple of years. Today's show is about a couple of crazy things. We're going to be talking about the internet takeover that's happening in like a couple of days. We're about to give it away. We're going to give it away to the UN, Now, no longer do we... can we really count on the privacy and the freedoms that we supposedly had? The internet is still censored to a certain extent. And just look up the Whole Heroes program. But, it's not just that. I mean, there are things that are happening on a kind of a spiritual, a down low level that we're going to be talking about today. The Arch. Palmyra. It's the Temple of Baal, I'm going to get into that because there's some real spooky connections there that I don't think a lot of people really understand how incredibly huge this is spiritually speaking, because everything kind of revolves around that spirit, that thought that's in us, right? So this arch is making its way all over the place, and now it's in New York. And coincidentally, we're seeing an uptick in crazy violence. I mean, murders are in the major cities, out of control. The protests that we see going on, out of control. Here in my hometown, I've lived here many, many years. Out of the blue, 5 children are being murdered by gangs. All right, yeah, so probably not the show for the kids today, but interesting to say the least because there's also some crazy predictive programming that's going on right under your noses. So get ready because today's show, it's on and it's popping. Okay, so I want to start off by talking about this archway, okay? A lot of people in, I guess, religious circles were sort of making a big deal about it. And as well they should, because Baal worship was sort of a big deal back in the day. People were sacrificing their children to this god. Basically, Baal means Lord, for those that don't know. And it basically kind of took over the predominant belief in, Yahweh or Jehovah or whatever names the Hebrew God was back in the day. And basically everyone turned over to worship Baal. There's a great story in scripture of Elijah. He was a prophet, right? And he was like one of the last prophets left because what happened was, since everyone was turning over to Baal worship, they were making it kind of a crusade to kill anyone that spoke of anyone but Baal. So anyone that would basically share a faith outside of the global faith that they were trying to push on the world, they were basically put to death. And Elijah was like the one guy that was left, and he felt the full weight of it. One day, the story goes, God came to him and said, go present yourself to Ahab. This is the king of Israel, and go tell him that there's going to be a big famine in the land because everyone's turned away from God and they've turned away from the truth and they've basically turned over to the lasciviousness and wickedness and they're sacrificing their children and they're doing horrible things and they're living in greed and they're living in lust. And so basically the whole world kind of just gave up any kind of morality. And so Elijah presents himself and he says, look, this is what's going to happen. It's not going to rain anymore. And guess what happened? It stopped raining. And then like a famine came because, the rain stopped and then the famines come, okay? And while this was happening, a lot of people were starting to talk because they're saying, well, look, we thought things were going good, but now all of a sudden, everything's kind of going to pot. Sort of like what's going on now, It's like this new agenda that's being forced on everyone, which we're going to talk about today. This new world order that for years, it's been in the making for years. Everybody has talked about it. Every world leader has kind of come out and said something about it. This new world agenda, this one world religion where they're basically trying to just take everything and they're putting it together and just going to say, you're going to worship this way, you're going to think this way, and we're all going to be controlled by the same entities. And what I mean by that is the elite, those puppet masters, the ones behind the scenes pulling all the strings. And they're going to make it sound great. They're going to talk about like peace and safety, and then sudden destruction comes. And that's kind of what's happening.
Peace and security in a world without nuclear weapons. That's what the U.S. President Barack Obama is to reaffirm through his visit to the city of Hiroshima in Japan.
Mr. President, it is good that you have convened this debate, and that the resolution which underpins it calls on us to reflect on our successes and our failures in the maintenance of international peace and security.
The provisional agenda for this meeting is maintenance of international peace and security.
There is a danger that after 70 years, these important words, the maintenance of international peace and security, flow too easily and perhaps even mechanically off our lips.
As we see this happening, we also see this upsurge in violent crimes and murder and just horrible. Horrible, horrible things. I mean, just the suffering and the loss of life, and people are so angry today, and that's kind of what was happening back in the day when Elijah said, hey, look, there's going to be a famine. And it's kind of sad because it seems like there's a kind of a famine in the land right now. Morally speaking and spiritually speaking, it just seems like everyone is just kind of bankrupt and they're all kind of looking out for themselves, and it's not really what can we do for our neighbors and for those that are in need, but what can I get out of things? And that's why things are turning out to be so cruel and so unfair and so unjust. I mean, watch the debates from last night, right? What do we see out of that? What do we get out of that? I mean, this is what's happened to our world today. These greedy, powerful people, they have manipulated and brainwashed us all, and they are now going to tell us how we need to even worship and how we are going to pray. It's called the Arch of Triumph because they believe that this is a triumph. Now, basically, the story goes like this, okay? There was this great temple in Palmyra, okay? And it was for Baal. It was very old, thousands of years old. And, ISIS basically destroyed it, okay? They destroyed it because of idolatry. That's basically what they were saying. They were destroying all of these historical relics. So, basically, they're kind of packaging this archway that's now placed in New York City. Take a look. They're packaging it as if we're not going to let the terrorists win, we're going to show them. But I got to tell you something. If you know anything about these terrorist groups, our governments basically formed them, and our government basically has, given them their weapons and their arms and their marching orders in many in many aspects. And so who's to say that this wasn't kind of part of the plan? I mean, the people on the ground, they're just following the propaganda that the leaders of ISIS are sharing, and they're ruled by some people too. And who's to say that this isn't a greater, darker plan? And that's why this archway, which, an archway is the entrance, it's the entrance to this temple of Baal. And it's being placed in all of these major cities, and we're just sitting back and we're letting it happen, even though spiritually speaking, it's bad news for anyone that has faith in more than what the government is for. I, for one, do. But I'm not one of those people that says you have to believe this way or not, because the God that I believe in, the God that I worship, the creator of all, that spirit that's in us all, has a plan for us all. And I believe it's all working together for the good. I believe that everyone, can look forward to, good things coming their way, regardless of if they're going to understand it or not. I don't believe in, this angry guy with a big white beard who's punishing people for the way they look or the way they're oriented. Or I believe in a very, very different God. A God that has a plan. A God that, we're all uniquely linked to. We all come from one thing. Everything comes from one thing. We all come from this source, this spirit. So the fact that, we see this arch going up everywhere, and the fact that people aren't making a bigger deal out of it, it kind of spooks me out a little bit, because on a spiritual level, when we look at these things, there's more to it. There's more to it than what they're telling us. So lawlessness is basically abounding today. The riots that we're seeing, horrible. These people are angry, and why shouldn't they be angry? They're outraged because they just don't feel that there is any justice in the world. And we have these people that are supposedly going to be our next great leaders, and these leaders, what are they doing? They're more racist than most of the people today that serve them ignorantly. All you have to do is kind of just Google the history of connections that Hillary has to the Grand Cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan, or Google the connections of Trump and his business dealings. And our leaders today, they're out for one thing and one thing only, and that is power, greed. And it's no wonder that it's trickling down, and it's no wonder that people are hurting now more than ever before. It's no wonder that people are outraged, because power corrupts. And we see it happening again and again and again. And this power, this rule, Obama was just at the UN, and he was talking about this global agenda. He was saying how, what is the great quote that he said? Let me see, hang on a second. He said this great thing. He said something like, I wrote it down. Something about being in prison. That a nation ringed by walls, he said, is doomed to be imprisoned by itself. And so at the UN, he was pushing this agenda. Take a look.
And so I believe that at this moment, we all face a choice. We can choose to press forward with a better model of cooperation and integration, or we can retreat into a world sharply divided and ultimately in conflict along age-old lines of nation and tribe and race and religion. I want to suggest to you today that we must go forward and not backward. I believe that as imperfect as they are, the principles of open markets and accountable governance, of democracy and human rights and international law that we have forged remain the firmest foundation for human progress in this century. I make this argument not based on theory or ideology, but on facts. Facts that all too often we forget in the immediacy of current events. Here's the most important fact. The integration of our global economy has made life better for billions of men, women, and children.
We saw it last year when the Pope met with the UN. We've seen it on a regular basis this is the new thing. We've heard Kerry talk about a borderless world. We've heard all of our, political leaders saying that we have to get used to this, that it's going to be great because there's going to be free trade and everybody's going to be awesome and happy. But here's the spooky thing, is what Obama said about those people that may kind of stand in the way of it. Take a listen.
Today, a nation ringed by walls would only imprison itself. So the answer cannot be a simple rejection of global integration. Instead, we must work together to make sure the benefits of such integration are broadly shared, and that the disruptions, economic, political, and cultural, that are caused by integration are squarely addressed.
Yeah, any kind of disruptions to this integration of this global order needs to be dealt with. So how are they dealing with it? Well, what do they say? Ignorance is bliss, right? Well, that's wrong. Ignorance is slavery. Wisdom is what sets you free. In the scriptures, it's wisdom that is a tree of life. That's the tree of life that we're supposed to grab hold of. Wisdom, because the truth sets us free from the lies that we've believed. And we've been programmed since birth to believe that we need to think a certain way, act a certain way, buy a certain way, eat a certain way, be who they are telling us to be. Blindly serve and say nothing. And if you say something, you're gonna be in trouble. We even police ourselves. There's this global citizen thing that was going on. It was a big deal in New York. And Usher came out and he says, silence is consent. Take a look.
If you see something's going on in the world and you don't say something about it, it is consent. You cannot turn your head away from the realities. You cannot turn your hearts away from the reality. Speak up.
Yeah, so we're taking, if you see something, say something, to the next level. People don't get it, right? Our children are brainwashed. We're brainwashed. We are being brainwashed into tattling on each other. We don't need the cameras on every corner anymore, right? Because we have our own family members that are going to tell on us, because they're being told in school that if you see something, you better say something. And if you don't say something, you're going to be in trouble. That's the new thing. Silence is consent. It's spooky, the day we're living in, people. I mean, we have no control over everything. Just the other day, I was, yesterday actually, not even the other day, I was looking up the sky and it was beautiful. And all of a sudden, I start seeing this one plane with a chemtrail and another plane with a chemtrail. And I'm going, why? It's a beautiful day. It's not too hot. Why can't I have a nice blue sky? Take a look. Ridiculous. All day long. Not allowed to have clear skies anymore. Now, by the end of the day, there was like one line after another line after another line, and people today still don't believe that they actually exist, even though it's right there on the NASA website. They tell you what's in these chemtrails. They go up there, they lace the sky with it, and over a period of time, it basically pulls the moisture out of the air and it creates this huge cloud that covers the sky completely. So you can't see past it. I don't know why it's there. Some people say that it's terraforming, that they're trying to heat up the world. Other people say they're trying to keep the world from being heat up. Other people say that it's a bunch of chemicals that is being sprayed in the air, and that as we breathe them, they're trying to keep us passive and ignorant. I don't know, but I got to tell you something. It bothers me when I see it. It bothers me. You know what else bothers me? It bothers me that we're told who we need to vote for, that we're only given these two real choices. And so much so that even though the choices are so terrible and so foul, that we end up saying, well, what's the best of the worst? And then we make that our our candidate and we become passionate about pushing this horrible person into office, this horrible person who's going to make our lives worse while promising a better life. Well, a better life is gone. A better life for many people has been gone. We haven't seen our lives improve. We have seen time and time and time again the rich getting richer and the middle class becoming poor and the poor becoming totally dependent on whatever it is that they say is there for their well-being. The times, they're gonna change. I'm usually very positive, and I want you to remember that you need to be positive too, because all of these things had to come, right? When Elijah said, look, the rain is coming, right? Like I've said over the years, I said, look, hard times are coming, but don't worry, because the rain's gonna come. It's gonna come. Good times are gonna come. The bad stuff that we've been seeing, that's going to come to an end. There's going to come a time when we're going to say no more. When a nightmare gets so bad that we can't take it anymore, guess what happens? You wake up. So that's what happened. The people woke up. They realized that worshiping Baal wasn't the way to go. And Elijah came down and said, you know what you're going to do? I'm going to show you that there's only one true God. You gather all those prophets of Baal. You get them together. We're going to put 2 sacrifices up. You get every prophet in the land of Baal and you tell them, call down the fire from heaven, right? And Elijah stands there and they're going crazy. They got hundreds of them and they're cutting themselves and they're saying, please Baal, burn this sacrifice. Nothing comes. Elijah starts messing with them. Elijah's like, what? Maybe he can't hear you. He's God. Maybe he's busy, right? Maybe he's asleep. But then Elijah comes. And he basically says, oh, that they may know that I serve you. Lord, take this offering. And after dousing it, right, with water so they could never say that it just lit on fire by itself, fire came down from heaven and consumed all of it. And then the prophets were, basically put to death, which I don't recommend. I don't think that this story is about literally killing anyone. I believe that it's a deeper story, a deeper meaning. That, we look around us and we see these altars of Baal, this Lord worship or this Illuminati worship or this celebrity worship, this holy wood, Everybody worships the stars today, just like they did in the past. It's no different, right? And everywhere you go, you see religious temples and religious churches, and they pop up everywhere, right? And everybody's saying a different thing. And they're everywhere, right? But no one has peace, no one has truth, and no one really feels that they have great purpose and hope in this world. So there's got to be more, and I know there is. And I know that as things seem terrible and they seem dark, I know change is coming. I know it. Now, I want to end on this little goofy thing that I saw, this Taco Bell commercial. It's crazy, right? It's about, because now everybody's escaping the real world with augmented reality. That's the new thing, virtual reality, right? Well, there's this great commercial where a guy comes back from the future and he warns them, don't put on the VR goggles and play this game because you're going to be so immersed in it that you're going to miss the alien invasion. Take a look.
So, with that box, you'll be the first to win PlayStation VR. Player one. Soon it spreads like wildfire. Humanity becomes so plugged in, we never see them coming. That's why I was sent back to stop you.
Oh, hey, I won.
Right.
The future of gaming starts at Taco Bell. Grab any $5 box and you can be one of the first to win PlayStation VR.
Now, I got to tell you something. Everybody knows Taco Bell. It has those 3 logos, right? It has that reptilian eye, right? That all-seeing eye and the 666 all over the building. There's the conspiracy behind Taco Bell, right? We also know that their meat isn't exactly so great. But the bottom line is, this commercial says something. Now, some people might call it predictive programming. There are a lot that believe that, our government is in bed with, aliens. And that's not what my point is. My point is that this commercial has a truth to it. And that truth is that we have so many distractions today. And there's a reason for it. Virtual reality is going to be the next one. We're going to be so fed up with our real lives that we're going to become immersed in this virtual world. And I'm telling you, that's not the way to go, people. Unplug, put your phone away for a little while. Stop with the Pokemon Go, and stop with the texting, and stop with the Facebook, and stop with everything. Don't stop the YouTube, though. I like when you come on your watch. Take a little while to unplug. Connect with your family. Connect with your friends. Stop judging others. There's a great scripture that used to be, before the Mandela effect in the scriptures, judge not lest you shall be judged. Many people have tattoos of it, but it's not there anymore. You can't really find it in the King James Bible, even though I know it was there. Now it's, do not judge or you will not be judged or whatever. But that bottom line is, judge not lest you shall be judged means one thing. How you judge things to be becomes your reality. It's not if you judge somebody to be a jerk that you're going to be punished for stealing the Raisinets or the Twizzles. No, it's if you judge someone to be a jerk, they're going to be a jerk. So how you believe things, your belief becomes a reality. There is more power in you than you know, people, right? So as the temples of Baal, as the archway is being set up, and as this new world order is being set up, and as the internet is slowly taken over by the UN, and we may be losing our rights. Remember, collectively together we can change that by loving and by being kind and by seeking more. In any event, I hope this